Welcome to week 10 of Montana's 69th legislative session. My name is Gaby Crevitt. I'm the communications director with the Montana Democratic Party.
And I'm Shannon O'Brien, former lawmaker, statewide candidate, and a teacher.
This week, we're unpacking the bills and events that have taken place throughout the first half of the legislative session. The legislature just wrapped up their transmittal break. Shannon, for folks who might not be familiar with that term, what is transmittal?
Yeah, it's halftime. So two things. We are 45 days into a 90-day session, and essentially we're basically 90 days. But secondly, this is the critical deadline for most bills to make it through one chamber, through either the Senate or the House, and then on to the next. So it has been a mad dash for legislators to push their bills to get them through committee and onto the floor for a vote to get them across the halfway finish line.
Gotcha. So can you give us a little more information on that? So what is the journey or process of a bill?
Yeah, love this. Social studies teacher in me. So committee assignments start before the legislative session begins. Legislators are assigned to committees. A bill is introduced. Maybe co-sponsors are added to the bill. And then those bills go to committee where they have a hearing, and then executive action is taken. That means it's voted on. And then if it makes it through executive action, meaning it passes in committee, it goes to the floor for what's called a second reading, where there's debate, and then third reading, where lawmakers can have one last chance to change their mind, but there's no debate. It's just a fast series of bills voted on for third reading. And then if it passes all of those things, then it's transmitted on to the other chamber where it experiences the exact same process: committee, second reading, third reading. And then, and only then, if it makes it through both chambers, it goes to the governor. And then the governor needs to sign it. And then after that, it goes to boards or agencies, and the agency might have some specific rules that they develop around that with the intention of the legislators who had discussion on it. Sometimes they'll go back and review committees and go from there.
Let me just ask you this, Shannon. Are bills that were tabled in the first half, is there any chance of those bills being resurrected in the second half? I know there were some really terrible abortion bills. One bill making it a crime to drive someone to get an abortion, one bill making a medication abortion illegal, and another bill that argued that medication abortions would harm the environment. Those were all tabled. Is it safe to say those are done? We won't see those again, or in the second half, can they just be resurrected?
Gaby, great question. What we would typically say is, oh, that bill died or that bill is dead. But any wise legislator knows that a bill is never dead until we sine die, which is the term we use for the adjourning at the very, very end of the legislative session. So rules can be suspended by a vote of the legislative body, and bills can be resurrected even after transmittal if something didn't make it through in time. So bills are never dead, is the bottom line.
That's good to know. So let me ask you this. What are some of your first impressions of the first half of the session? What are some major takeaways for you?
Yeah, we always say every session is different. Every session has its own personality, and this season is no exception. The biggest standouts for me, certainly, I think for most folks, growth in the minority numbers since last session. We have 10 more in the House and 2 more in the Senate. Lots of strong first session legislators, rookies who are really just crushing it. And that creates a whole new dynamic First, I was a first year legislators, they don't know their own limits, and they don't realize their own strengths and what they can't do. And so it's been really fun to see them thrive, and they're being encouraged by leadership. So they know that the sky's the limit. And then on the other side of the Senate side, for sure, the nine quote real Republicans, the what we would call the moderate Republicans, or have made this bipartisan coalition um, with Democrats. So they're working closely with our caucus, the Democrat caucus, to block a lot of really bad bills and that take away some of our basic human rights and are against public education, and they're really supporting a lot of democratic values. Montana values. These are Montana values. Uh, and then, of course, all the drama that we, get sucked into with Senator Jason Ellsworth, the former president, who's been in ethics and also criminal charges. And then now the current president, Matt Regier, is it looks like there'll be some ethics violations or some he's being accused of ethics violations, and we'll see what happens moving forward there.
I'm just curious, Shannon, do we think that we'll find out, I guess, the fate of Senator Ellsworth during this session, or are we not going to get news on this, on his investigation until later, you think, until after the session? Is there any way of knowing at this point?
The timing of the legislature is so unpredictable. I don't know. My guess is we likely won't. Maybe in the ethics, but not the criminal investigation. So, and essentially, and I was on ethics last session. What ethics does is complete a report after its investigation, and then based on that report, they do have recommendations, but it's up to the majority leadership to make decisions on any consequences. So we'll just see. Stay tuned.
Like they say in news, only time will tell. So let's shift gears and talk about the issues themselves. Democrats in the House and Senate are pretty consistent with their messaging of freedom, fairness, and affordability. How do you see these issues playing out?
Yeah, you will specifically hear them say over and over again those three words: freedom, fairness, and affordability. And that's what drives them. And then also the Senate and the House laid out their specific priorities. Property taxes is what they heard day after day, door after door when they were meeting with constituents. Strong schools is something that's been a Democrat priority um, ever since. Affordable housing, keeping people in their homes, and whether that's rent or home ownership. And then healthcare has certainly been a high priority.
Okay, so let's start with healthcare. What does that look like?
Yes, indeed. So the biggie is continuing Medicaid. You had a great conversation with Representative Mary Cafaro, who's been a strong champion on the importance of fair health care for all Montanans. And she introduced her own Medicaid bill that did not pass, but she was able to work very hard, and other Democrats worked very hard to get another bill passed um, that basically continues health care. If you're sick, you should be able to just go to the doctor, and that's one of the pieces that this bill does. And that was a bipartisan bill that passed through both the House and the Senate, and is now on to the governor. But let's be really clear, the governor has not yet signed that bill as of our recording time. And so we don't count our chickens before they're hatched. I'm starting to get curious why he hasn't signed it yet. We don't know what kind of pressure the governor might be getting from Washington, D.C. to minimize support for those people who are most vulnerable.
Yeah, we'll see if it does get signed by the governor. Something really interesting that Representative Cafaro highlighted was, it's been the Democrats leading the way on Medicaid expansion from the very start. And, she reminded me Republicans might try and swoop in and take credit for it, but it's been Democrats. They've been leading the charge on this from day one. We have a sound clip from Representative Cafaro.
This is a Democrat bill. It is Democrat priority. It is Democrat values. Way, way back when, we have always, always fought for all people to have access to health care, all people, because we know what happens when you have a healthy population. The person who is working in the back of the house, who really needs their teeth fixed, under Medicaid expansion, that happened. And that worker now was on a career ladder and moved to the front of the house. And for the first time, these are my constituent stories, for the first time in his life, he was able to smile and feel proud. Those are really important stories.
And I do know for a fact Representative Cafaro has lots of stories similar to that.
Yeah, she's just a champion. And along with Cafaro, Representative Howell, who is a great Democrat, very effective, had a great bill to ensure that if you're sick, like I mentioned, you should be able to see a doctor. And there were two additional bills that passed through the House that were just able to eliminate unnecessary paperwork for renewal of coverage and to rein in these insurance companies that were that had denials of so many life-saving medication. So those are great.
Great. Well, switching gears, we heard a lot about property taxes during campaigns. Shannon, you were on the tax committee. Do you have any insights here? Where are we?
Yeah, taxes, that's the big issue. And property taxes in particular. Our system is right now way out of alignment. And in the last few years, we've seen major tax cuts for our wealthiest. And we've seen property taxes go through the roof for Montanans, which has hit our friends on a fixed income, especially. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. I'm hearing stories of rent doubling so landlords can keep up with their taxes. It's and quite frankly criminal. And I'll tell you, 2 years ago, we knew this was going to happen with our property taxes. The Department of Revenue told us this was going to happen. And Republicans just chose not to do, there was no appetite to do anything to solve that problem. So Democrats did some magic, simple things like application fees they shouldn't be a source of revenue for landlords. So let's allow those application fees to be returned if they're not even used. And and some bills to protect renters along those lines. And Mark Thane, Jonathan Carlin, both representatives introduced bills to cut property tax rates for homeowners, um, those people living in their own homes, not their second or third or fourth homes on Flathead Lake or up in Big Sky. So these gained bipartisan support, and it's very exciting. So
Yeah, those are examples of Democrats fighting for property taxes and also fighting for affordable housing and increased housing for renters, right?
that's right.
All right, let's shift gears to education.
Yeah, I'm just going to start with why. Why is a strong public education so important to Montanans? And yes, certainly so individuals can go on to live their dreams, whether it's college or military or trade school, etc. But it's the most essential piece for the economy. And that is the workforce. And you can ask any employer, they're only as strong, any company is only as strong as their employees. And that said, it's also the foundation for the American dream. And it's what levels the playing field. For the ranch hand kids, ranch who lives in Ekalaka, it's their fair shot at taking over the ranch or being a teacher or an entrepreneur or a jet pilot. Uh, you know, Multiple bills were introduced by Democrats to address funding, both in the House and Senate. Right now, there's a law that exists to cap increases for schools, for inflation. They have inflationary adjustment, they call, and they cap that at 3%. And we all know a couple of years ago, inflation was like at 7%. So why should schools be punished for that? So there was a bill coming out of the Senate to help with that. And they just, our schools need to keep the lights on. And it's often that could be at the expense of the kids. The key to success in school, really, drum roll please, is kindergarten readiness. And if you're ready with some basic ABCs, one, two, threes, you're ready for success. And Representative Melissa Romano passed a bill supporting early learning. Jonathan Carlin has two bills that passed through supporting families and childcare so that every family has the opportunity to pay for childcare, which is horribly expensive right now. And yeah, we just have to prioritize this. It's a Montana value, and it's certainly a Democratic value.
Well, we should also note that working Montanans saw some big wins with anti-union bills that were killed. This is all great news for working Montanans and their families. Shannon, am I missing anything else? Is there anything else you wanted to highlight from the first half of the legislative session?
Yeah, I'll just add that the Montana American Indian Caucus has been so strong this session. They've invited anyone who wants to participate in the caucus to do so. They're having legislators approach them to get their endorsement letter of support for some bills, which is, I don't know if that's ever been done. And we've seen some major wins there. Shane Morgeau's Indigenous Peoples Day, it's been introduced session after session and has not gotten traction. And this time it's made it through the Senate. Susan Weber had special training for educators on human trafficking and to help address the MMIW, missing and murdered Indigenous women. That it's a simple step in the right direction. I won't say solution, but step in the right direction. Indian Education for All is a phenomenal program. Montana leads it, and there was a bill to support that. And then also Senator Wendy Boyd's Indian Child Welfare Act to help children. It really supports children who might have to be removed from the family. It helps build culture and so that they don't lose all of their culture and language opportunities. So that was a big win so far.
Thanks, Shannon. Anything else for our listeners?
Yeah, I think right now it is back to what I mentioned. It's halftime. This is halftime. Anything can happen. We've had major victories for Democrats across the board and some defeats, but major victories. So stay involved. We've had these town hall meetings, hundreds. I just heard that Bozeman had 315 people show up for a town hall meeting with their legislators a couple of days ago, and 150 in Whitefish, and people are showing up, and it's so exciting. So please spread the word. Come to our legislative action meetings that are twice weekly. Go to the website, montanademocrats.org, and that's where you can get more information of how to sign up for their Zoom meetings, and we will hold your hand to get you involved in the legislative session. But, it ain't over. The game ain't over. So we need to stay on board with this, contacting legislators, giving testimony, stirring up the courage to do that, and connect with your friends and neighbors, and don't be discouraged. Turn that horrible, terrible business that's going on in Washington, D.C., turn that into fire in the belly to take action here locally and at the state level.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for listening to our Blue Bunch podcast. Be sure to join us next week. Shannon, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, great fun. Thanks, Gabby. And thanks to all of our listeners for showing up. Number one rule in politics is showing up.
Great. We'll see everyone next week.